Okay, as for the final presenter here, we have with us Marios Koutsoukos, who's a third-year PhD candidate in the Department of Archaeology, Classics and Egyptology at the University of Liverpool, and he's working on the history of ancient religions and Neoplatonic theurgy in particular. He is also a writer and lyricist for the Viking folk metal bands Folk Earth and Folklodia, as well as the symphonic death metal band Dim Light and the Viking death metal band Downcast Twilight, and that's only among others. So yeah, very influential lyricist, I would say. And he's here to present a paper on a great topic, headbanging to history, disseminating pre-modernity through extreme metal genres. The floor is yours, Marios.
Thank you very much for that, Christian. And I would like also to thank very much Charlotte and Jeremy for opening my eyes to the fact that there is such a thing as metal academic research and all of that. For the purpose of this presentation, I will be speaking in my capacity as metal lyricist / metal artist, or person who hangs out with artists, much like a bass player. So having said that, let me share my screen and let's get on with it. Sorry, more. Well, where is that share screen button? I'm sorry about that. So what's wrong with this? Come on. Am I not like a moderator? Do I have the...
You should have co-host privileges.
Yeah. There it is. I'm sorry for that. So there we go. So that's it. Yep. Hello. So let's get on with it. So learning about history can be boring and, quite frankly, a waste of time. Or at least that's what a considerable number of people seem to think nowadays. Perhaps this observable lack of interest in history, especially amongst younger people, is caused by the fast-paced materialistic dictates of the modern world. This dominant paradigm that seems to be that if you can't make good money off of it and fast, then you don't need it. Then again, perhaps the educational system is to blame. At least, speaking from personal experience, the modern Greek educational system knows all too well how to drain the fun out of learning history and to turn it into a tedious, useless chore. This is why I never had any particular interest or attraction towards history growing up until I crossed paths with the guys who made heavy metal and they saw that it was good. You know what I mean? When in my teenage years, I first listened to Gravediggers, Tunes of War, and Knights of the Cross, Saxon's Crusader, Virgin Steel's The Fall of the House of Atreus, and Manowar's ridiculously long Achilles, Agony, and Ecstasy in 8 parts. And of course, I was immediately hooked on history. It happened so fast that I didn't even realize it. So the combination of really powerful and robust music with lyrical themes exploring a digest of bygone eras of strife, war, tragedy, as well as elation and triumph really struck a chord in me. And like a true fanboy, I always wanted more. Seeing that at the time there were precious few metal artists and albums dealing with pre-modernity, I turned to the study of history with a vengeance. And here I am, 20-odd years later, finishing my PhD thesis on ancient history. But before things took this dark turn, back in distant 2002 and 2003, I was given my first opportunity to contribute to that heavy metal spell which induces love of history. Through a string of happy coincidences, I came in contact with the late Ruslanas Danisevskis, aka Metfolvik, and he invited me to participate as the full-time lyricist of a folk Viking metal project he always wanted to create, which would include musicians and artists from all around the world. I gave him a list of admittedly cool band names, and he chose the silliest one of the lot, a name I had merely added to the list when I finally gave up on squeezing my brain. And thus, Folk Earth was born. In 2004, our first album, A Nordic Poem, was released through a Russian record label, Stygian Crypt Records, and it featured 14 musicians from 6 different European countries, not to mention my favorite folk earth song of all time, Gaelic Valor, as you can see on the screen. And all the songs dealt with Viking mythology, with the sole exception of the song here mentioned, whose subject was the resistance of the Gaelic peoples of Britain against the Roman invasion, which lasted approximately 40 years, from 43 to 84 BC. Now, between 2004 and 2014, we released 12 albums in total, including two acoustic ones, Songs of Yore in 2008 and Minstrels by the River in 2011, which featured acoustic reprises of previous songs. The lineup, Folk Earth, kept changing constantly, with very few of us remaining as a constant core group. In the end, Folk Earth had featured over 30 musicians from Italy, Lithuania, Poland, Russia, Belgium, Monaco, Australia, the United States, Argentina, Greece, Switzerland, Spain, Norway, and the UK, Croatia, and France. So this here, you can see more, more covers. All of them, as you can see, feature Viking iconography, and yes, unsurprisingly and unoriginally enough, focusing on military aspects of that culture. Sorry, I just anyway. Now, despite being such a motley assortment of musicians and artists, what united us was our love for this particular genre of metal, as well as our fascination with the pre-modern world, its history and mythology. Now, the majority of Folk Earth's lyrics deal with Scandinavian mythology, such as in songs Naglfar Set Sail, Hugin and Munin, The Bane of Giants, etc., as well as a highly romanticized and sometimes grossly generalized approach towards the military exploits of Vikings. From a historical standpoint, the Vikings were far from being a homogeneous group of people. Rather, Viking was a professional choice and not a lifelong commitment at that. For just a small percentage of the Scandinavian peoples of Denmark, Norway, and Sweden between the 8th and the 11th centuries. Now, this portrayal of Vikings as a unified group of fearless pagan warriors who crossed the raging seas in search of conquest, although grossly ahistorical for the greater part, exercises a strong appeal to heavy metal fans worldwide today, from the Mediterranean and the Near East to South America and Australia. They too, like these imagined Vikings, feel at odds with the religious and social establishment, and they too yearn to travel the world in search of adventure and wild times. This primal pre-modern urge to stand out from the established norm and carve a name for oneself in the world is what creates a strong link between Viking metal and its fan base, making the genre so popular to people otherwise disinterested in European history of the 8th and the 11th century. And here we have also some of the songs that are part of the Folk Earth repertoire, yet do not deal with Viking mythology. As we shall presently see, we did verge away from that norm. So, but Vikings are just the tip of the iceberg. Pre-modernity has so much more to offer in terms of inspiration in a heavy metal milieu. Arthurian legends, Greek and Roman mythology and history, Irish, Welsh and Scottish folklore, ancient Egyptian metaphysical and magical religious beliefs. In truth, pre-modernity is a veritable treasure trove of wonders, ranging from the epic and lyrical to the eerie, the dreamy, and the occult. With that in mind, in 2008, Folk Earth expanded into a spin-off band, Folkodia, in order to explore lyrical motifs away from the Nordic norm, as we would say. After all, we had already done that in the context of Folk Earth, as you can see, with songs like Hoplites Awaiting Command, Freedom or Death, Kosovo 1389, The Iron Wolf, The Great God Pan, etc., but never before so systematically as we did with Folkodia. For me, this was a license to just go wild and leave no overlooked stone, no unturned stone of history, and even pseudo-history. Now, even thus, everything came into the mix. Tales from the Alexander Romance of Pseudo-Callisthenes about the evil subterranean race of the Magog, as you can see in the album Fall of the Magog right there. The battles between the Tuatha De Danann and the monstrous Firbolgs in the first Battle of Moytira, we have a song by that name, I believe. Roman military history in a song called Muli Mariani. Spanish medieval history, we do have a song called El Cid the Champion. Ancient Egyptian religion, a song called Apophis, and even fictional characters like Elric of Melniboné, the song Pale Prince on a Moonlit Shore, or conspiracy theories concerning the Stratospherian Flugzeug of the Third Reich, the infamous Hanebu flying saucers. Now, All 6 Folkody albums from 2008 to 2013 were in fact a kind of historical florilegium for the discerning metal fan, presenting listeners with hints, winks, and small tidbits of fact to whet the appetite for exploring the complex maze of oddities and wonders that is pre-modernity. It is also worth mentioning that the cover artwork, done by the very talented and well-established extreme metal cover illustrator Chris Verwimp, display an impressive degree of historical accuracy. Having worked with Chris on the covers of other bands I'm also involved in, Downcast Twilight, for instance, I can truly say that I appreciate both his talent and his consultations of primary sources and museum examples when drawing historically related pieces. Now, a while later, so in 2013, I wrote the lyrics to Sacred Blood's concept album Alexandros, and again collaborated with the band in 2015 on their album Argonautica. Both of these albums were in the power metal genre, the first dealing with Alexander the Great and his rise to power, while the latter with the metal, it was a metal adaptation of the myth of Jason, the Argonauts, and the Golden Fleece, using the Argonautica of Apollonius of Rhodes as the primary source. More than that, there were a reaction to the dominant xenomania of the Greek metal scene at the time. Surprising as it may sound to some, for decades, the Greek metal scene has treated Greek pre-modernity with disdain. Any foreign themes in terms of lyrical content were welcomed as innovative and original, whereas dealing with ancient Greek, or God forbid Byzantine history or mythology, was looked upon as backwards, boorish, and at least quaintly laughable. With Sacred Blood, we wish to address this gap in the Greek metal scene and restore ancient Greek pre-modernity in the mind of the metal fans, both within the country as well as worldwide. The most radical and metal thing we had to say was, it's okay to be Greek and a metal fan at the same time. It's okay to be you. To that end, actually, I did have a little problem uploading the videos, but you know what? I'll give you a very brief clip of Sacred Blood's videos. I don't know if you can hear the sound. Right. Yeah, that was just to give you a quick glimpse of what we did there with Sacred Blood. So we collaborated with the Association of Historical Studies, Corybantes, perhaps the country's most prolific group of reenactors and experimental archaeologist enthusiasts, in order to inform the aesthetics of our video clip with actual history, in order to avoid making them look cheap, tacky, and farcical, as detractors of Greek pre-modernity would a priori consider such endeavors. Oh, now that works, surprisingly enough. Okay, let's see that also. Oh, nice. Previously didn't work. Okay, give you another very small for that.
We can't hear anything.
Marius, you're not sharing your audio. Just click on share screen, then click on share computer audio. Then we're going to be able to hear it.
All right, so you could see my screen, but not my. I'm sorry. Am I still sharing my screen?
We can only hear your voice speaking because you're not sharing your computer audio.
All right. Well, in any case, so I'm past that clip. I can still give you a link for that. Never mind. Little technical difficulties. I'm still a bit rusty on my Zoom skills. Now, this utilization of ancient Greek mythological themes in the lyrics was intended not just as a celebration of our heritage, culture, and identity, but also as an attempt to export Greek culture in the wider international metal scene and help it take its proper place in metal. However, much to our disparagement, the release of these two albums coincided with the rise in popularity of the extreme right political party of the Golden Dawn in Greece. Once, the Golden Dawn had been just an underground group of Nazi skinheads, ironically, not to mention bafflingly, sticking to all the Germanic supremacy tropes of that subculture. Very few people knew they existed as an organization back then, but in 2012, they rebranded their form of extremism as an expression of grassroots Greek patriotism, appropriating in the process the lion's share of Greek history, from antiquity to the fall of Constantinople in 1453. The popularity of this rebranding, fueled by ignorance and long years of neglectful and disdainful attitude toward the treatment of Greek history, resulted in their thankfully short-lived rise to power. Thus, the metal community in particular switched its stance from disdain to downright suspicion and hostility towards any form of music, and especially epic Pan-style music, dealing with Greek pre-modernity. Golden Dawn's appropriation and biased interpretation of ancient Greek history had created a very hostile climate for the reception of any work with direct reference to the Greek pre-modernity. It is almost ironic that the Greeks, who like small children forget their own history, as the priest of Sais reportedly once told Solon, and scorn it, gradually came to vilify it and connect it with an extreme right political movement. Thankfully, after the Golden Dawn became outlawed as a criminal organization in recent years and was disbanded, with most of its key members being sent in prison, the metal community has expunged much of the stigma which traditionally went along with the exploration of Greek pre-modernity in metal lyrics. The recent discographic endeavors of bands like Rotting Christ, with songs like Kata του δαίμονος εαυτού or Tu Thanatou, which is an amazing metal interpretation of a traditional Greek song from the medieval period, are a perfect example of this. Meanwhile, I would like to compare this stance with what was happening elsewhere in that same period. In 2015, I collaborated with the Greek band Dim Light on the album The Lost Chapters, which is a concept album retelling the ancient Egyptian fable of the birth of Hathor, goddess of beauty and fertility. The Lost Chapters was received with raving praise from the metal fans in Egypt, especially. After the band's fully packed performance in an Islamic youth center in Cairo, I had the opportunity to come into contact with many people who not only were excited to enjoy a metal album dealing with the mythological tradition of their own culture, but were inspired and motivated to, at least privately, reject the dogmas of absolutism and theocracy prevalent in their social milieu. And that is something I count as a big win for pre-modernity in extreme metal genres. It is a tool which broadens one's horizons. It does not limit them to a slavish adoration of some idealized past. To that end, I believe extreme metal genres should be allowed the artistic license to buff up the rough edges of history and gloss over factual historical reality from time to time in order to present a more idealized historical narrative, which will serve as an introductory step to a more serious study of history. After all, an ounce of inspiration towards bettering oneself is worth more than a ton of factual knowledge, at least in terms of self-development. Besides, what better way to inspire the study of the past, the unraveling of deeply symbolic myths and legends, than through a genre of music which, in its aftertaste, bypasses all processes of rational thought and hits home to one's collective subconscious. And just to prove this to you, feel free to download the song that we have available in the Google Drive. It is technically the world's first historically accurate Viking metal song, composed by the multi-talented metal artist Athanasios Karapanos of Downcast Twilight, exclusively for this conference. It has none of the romanticized tropes of this approach we've discussed, and in fact comes with its complete list of bibliographical references, only to prove how boring, demotivational, and uninspiring a thrilling subject can be when viewed from a clinically sterilized angle of the historian, lacking the often blundering enthusiasm of the metalhead. So, thank you very much. That's one. Stop staring at my screen.
No. Thank you so much for that blast of a presentation. It's really wonderful to see, and there's so much history to headbang to. We'll have a couple of questions already from the chat, Marios. The first one is if Folklorius lyrics resorted more to, there's someone who wants to ask if Folklorius lyrics resorted more to historical or to legendary or to popular sources. So about the sources, if there's a preference for any of these sources when writing lyrics for metal. Amarantha is particularly interested in the lyrics of El Cid the Champion, but the question is a general one. What is the role of historical sources in your work?
Yeah, in my work, well, at least in Folkodia, the volume of the work we had to put out was often quite enormous. So the late Ruslanas would say, we want an album, so write something. I had to squeeze my mind, and that there were points that I was really grasping at, okay, what shall we do? Lithuanian history, Spanish history, I was just grabbing things at random and studying on them, the sources being, well, I tried to keep them as primary as possible, because I do find that primary sources offer very raw and unfiltered inspiration, very biased, sure, very one-sided, but this actually makes, that was the point of the presentation, makes for a good metal feeling, something that the fans can really relate to. And in terms of the El Cid song, yeah, obviously the old movie with Charlton Heston was a very strong basis of that inspiration, but for me, it was an excuse or an opportunity to study up on the history of the whole Reconquista and the struggles of the Spanish with the Arabs. I wasn't familiar with that. So yeah, all this came at random, picking from, just the order to write something about history, but not Vikings. That was the directive for Folkodia.
Okay. Any more questions from the audience? Yeah. We have a question here from one of the organizers. Thank you, Marios, for giving us an intriguing introduction to the lyricist experience. Charlotte is particularly interested in the comments made about filling gaps in history knowledge and that artistic license. That artistic license is important. Do you think that there is a way that a musician can misuse or misrepresent history?
Of course, history can be, well, it can be misrepresented because you cannot actually study or present history accurately within the 3 or 5 minutes you have for a song. It's technically impossible. So you have to take a biased vantage point. So in that case, yeah, it's always more like not personally, most human emotions. You target a certain emotion and then you build around it a cocoon of historicity. So as each song is showcasing a certain emotion, elation, hatred, joy, love, whatnot. But yeah, history is more like, in terms of songs, it's like a seed that you throw into the earth, and hopefully this will spring into actual historical knowledge. But in no way does it substitute historical knowledge, and it can very easily be appropriated by people who want to see what they see. It's just like with feelings. People will see what they want to see in another individual, so it's the same with music.
Okay, great. Another question here: how can professional historians help lyricists who are interested in writing songs about the history in which we specialize?
Well, that's actually a great question, and they can actually give them hints and tidbits for, in my opinion, the least known historical facts or the little twists of history, or sometimes even speculative theories that might be quite unfounded or a bit out there, like Akhenaten was Moses. Wow, you can't actually support that with a lot of solid historical evidence, but it makes for a good, solid song. So historians can showcase or present their theories and like test, if you want, experiment with the reception of the public. again, this is very good because for the listener, it prompts an interest to find out, for instance, was Moses Akhenaten, what was going on with ancient Egypt in that example. But at the same time, it's dangerous because people, if they base their knowledge only on metal songs, no, that can't work.
Excellent. Just out of interest, do you have a particular favorite period that you like to work on as a lyricist?
To be honest, no. I mean, I cut some little bits of the presentation to save time, but for instance, with Downcast Twilight, what we do, each album is dedicated to a separate time period. So we have an album about ancient Rome, one for Scotland and Scottish myths, and now another one about Sumerian and Babylonian myths. Now we're doing a couple of albums on Egypt, but I really like this format in Downcast Twilight, that each album is dedicated to a period. So for each period, I study a period that I wouldn't otherwise, devote a full-blown academic study to it. But, as reading a couple of sources and getting into it, that's, I mean, I like my metal to have a variety, to be a buffet of world cultures. This is the beauty of it.
Excellent. That's really good answer. There's lots of history to look at. Excellent.